Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Sitting in for Phil Mackesy, here is Jim Goddard.
Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, David Morgan believes there are unique investment opportunities we haven't seen in 3 decades. Inc. Research CEO Ted Dixon tells us what sectors will be best bets. And Web of Debt author Ellen Brown calls for a massive reform of the U.S. banking system. We talk to David Morgan right after this.
The best of the best. Randy Elvis Frisky and his Las Vegas show band with Cassandra Frisky. September 14th at the Sagebrush Theater. Tickets at Kamloops Live box office. Call 374-LIVE. Details at randyelvisfrisky.com.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Sitting in for Phil Mackesy, here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is David Morgan, author of the noted Morgan Report investment letter. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Great to be with you.
Well, This Week in Money is going to hear about, have we seen the bottom of the gold market, and is it for real? And is everything overpriced out there except mining stocks? Well, let's take a look at the gold market first. Has gold bottomed out? Could it go any lower than it is right now?
Well, could it? Of course, the answer to that's always certainly could. I really doubt it. I think that the bottom is in. I've called the bottom of the silver market, and that applies to gold as well. If you go back technically and look at the charts, if you look at the 28th of July, 28th of July, we have what's called a key reversal in silver, and you can look that up on Google what a key reversal is. Basically, hit a new low, and there's tons of buying at that new low during the day, and it sends it up strongly and closes at a high that's higher than the previous day. That's called a key reversal. So that took place, and ever since then, the whole month of August, we basically trended sideways in silver around the 1950 level. And the 2050 level is kind of the breakout point. We saw that. I called for a rally, and basically we've seen it. I think it's got more to go. But both gold and silver, I think, have found their intermediate bottoms here. I'm talking about recent time, meaning from the high in silver way back in April 2011. It's been well over 2 years now. I think that bottom is in for that consolidation period. It's the right amount of time, the right amount of sentiment, and certainly the key reversal. So factoring all I know, it looks like the bottom is in for silver, the bottom is in for gold, and we are not out of a main uptrend as far as the long-term bull market is concerned. There's many or some that think that the bull market's over. It's not, but I have to be fair. To be absolutely positive that the bull market isn't over, we do have to establish new highs. So we'd have to see gold go over the 1900 level approximately, and silver back up to that 50 level and penetrate it and keep on going. And I think that will happen, but I don't think that's going to happen in 2014. I think we're probably going to have to wait into the 2015 time frame before we see that. Although, let me back up on that. I'm sorry. I think we'll see new highs. First of all, when, no one knows. I'll be the first to admit that. I think it's going to take some work. In other words, if it took 2 years to consolidate and come off the bottom, and there's lots of resistance on the way back up, it's probably going to take some time to get through those levels. And we do need to get through those levels to prove that we're still in an absolute bull market. Once that's achieved, then I think you'll see an acceleration to the upside. So knowing what I know about how markets move, I would forecast that you're not going to see this real frenzied market action probably for another year and a half or so. And again, using those numbers as a baseline, it's an area to keep your, to note and to remark on, because if you're a momentum player, really the safest thing to do, I'm not suggesting this, but if you play momentum stuff, the $1,900 level in gold and the $50 level in silver is actually a great momentum play, because once you get through those levels, you will see an acceleration.
Of course, the whole idea is you want to buy these precious metals for as little as possible. So right now seems like a good time to start stocking up.
Well, absolutely. I think the, safest place to start is, where we are now, because you have a confirmed bottom, or at least I think you do. And so you want to buy after the bottom is confirmed. It's safer. It's less risk. And secondly, you get the best gains. Certainly, the acceleration phase I just mentioned is the area where I think the biggest money is going to be made. I really think that. But it's also an area that's rather treacherous, because you get so much momentum and these metals keep going up and up and up. And of course, underlying that are the mining shares that will go ballistic, in my view. It gets into this huge beating frenzy, and then no one wants to call a top or take profits, and that's a mistake. I lived through that myself once. I'm old enough to have been through the bull market in the previous decades, in the 1970s through 1980, and I know that you get stung by greed, and you can get a little bit caught up into it. So I'm trying to stay very objective this time, and be able to stay calm, cool, collected, and take some money off the table on the way up.
It's always a good idea to have a long-term investment plan, and if we're expecting prices to go up, this would kind of fit into that plan.
Well, exactly, and we're addressing, once we get there. I mean, the market knows more than anyone. I've constantly said that, and I constantly try to obey that. And based on market action, we'll make some determinations. But we're a long ways from worried about a top right now. We're basically, as I said, confirming a bottom. And if you're new, it's a good time to get in. If you're not, you certainly want to hold what you have. And lastly, I think we might want to look at the mining shares, because that's the area I think you've got the greatest leverage by far, and probably the lowest risk right now. I
saw a headline in an economic paper that said everything is overpriced except mining stocks.
I think that's fairly accurate. I mean, I do my own grocery shopping these days, and I have in the past. I don't want to dwell on that. But the point is, I think just about everything is overpriced. But the mining shares are at a huge discount to the underlying metals. The only caveat really is to be sure, if you're playing in the junior space, you're playing in a micro cap area, be extremely careful, because even though the bottom is probably in, some of these companies are so low on cash in the treasury, they may not be able to survive, even if they have a good asset base. So you got to be careful on the micro caps or these smaller junior mining companies or exploration companies. But if you're looking at the mid-tier on up, certainly there's value there right now that's probably not been available for 3 decades. So this is an area that you really want to focus on for, solid investment. And certainly if you want to speculate into the, junior/micro cap area, certainly. My biggest concern is that most of the letter writers out there focus on the micro caps only, or significantly in that space. And these guys have been devastated. I mean, just so many of these companies are no longer existing. So, we try to balance risk with reward, and therefore we have a top tier, a mid tier, and a speculative section of the report. And by doing that, certainly I wouldn't say that we've done great the last couple of years, but relative to a lot of my peers, we have, because a lot of these companies, are still viable and continuing. And to be fair, we've had a couple that kind of blindsided us. We had one that was going into full production, or announced full production, and basically they pulled in their tentacles and said, well, we're not going to produce, and now it's sort of iffy if they will or they won't. And there was another one that was similar to that. And these are both speculations, which I teach people, bet a little to win a lot, and don't bet more than you can afford to lose. So I don't have any guilt about recommending them. But nonetheless, these were producers or near producers, and yet they failed as well. So you do have to be careful. I mean, it is a tough business, but again, risk and opportunity. You have an opportunity here that I know is a once in a 3-decade opportunity. You have not had the discrepancy between the price of gold and HUI at this level for 30 years. So if you want to get in a once in a lifetime opportunity, get into the mining shares, diversify, spread out, allocate your capital in a judicious manner, and hold on for the ride, because I believe this is going to be one of the biggest rides you're ever going to take.
Taking a look overseas, China, of course, how its economy goes, now it seems there goes the world as well. And I was really surprised to find that the Chinese are a nation of savers, perhaps saving at least half their income every year. Why is that?
Well, I'm not sure it's that much, although I won't argue. I don't know the facts. I know they do save a great deal. And the reason is that they're motivated by their own self-interest. In other words, there is no, real socialism there. There isn't a social security system per se, for the Chinese. So they're basically on their own. And so that's a motivation. I mean, if you're motivated because you are responsible for whether you eat or you don't, and you're responsible for living off your savings in your old age, and no one's out there to help you, there's no, big daddy that's going to come to your rescue, then that's a huge motivation. And this is the whole idea that I've been trying to get across for years now, is that the Chinese mentality is much, much different than the West, and that they are motivated. These people there, especially the younger people, know that they have to perform. And so this huge motivation continues. Now, that doesn't say that China doesn't have problems and they haven't overbuilt their real estate markets and all the negative stuff that you hear about. But the productive capacity of China is yet to be realized. And the ingenuity in China is gaining a great deal. So I think in the long term, you're going to see what I forecast, in the 2000s, early 2000s, is a huge shift in wealth, the wealth from the West to the East. And as an Austrian economist, you look at what is the means of production. In other words, who's making wealth? Who's taking assets out of the ground? Who's growing? Who's manufacturing? And that's basically China. I mean, they're manufacturing most of this stuff and selling it for basically paper money. And so they're wising up to that as well. And not buying nearly as much debt off the U.S. Bond market as they used to. So there's a big, big shift going on. And again, they're super, super motivated. They are not relying on the state to take care of them per se. I'm not saying the state isn't involved. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is on an individual level, they're much more motivated than, let's say, the average American citizen.
I've heard the comment that the Chinese now appear to have more economic freedoms than America does.
Well, I'm going to get some people upset with me, but having been there and walking the streets and seeing how it operates, certainly in a lot of levels, that's true. I mean, you could put up, for an example, a hot dog stand and start selling hot dogs in the streets of Beijing. To the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong on this, but you can put up businesses without all the red tape that it would require here. You have to get the health department out there and how much space and get a license and another license and get the city license, the county license, the state license, the national license, the health inspector, the EPA statement, and all this other stuff to start a business. They can start a business fairly easily, much easier than you could in the West, for example, in most cases. So that's more free market. I mean, and now the market decides whether your hot dog stand is worth it or not. You either draw people that buy it and make a profit, or people say, no, I don't want your product, and you fail. That's real free enterprise. And yes, it does take place in China, and in some cases it's true. But, you say that and you get people upset, and I don't mind getting people upset, believe me, because they've got this preconceived idea. One, they haven't ever been there, and two, they've been brainwashed. They believe that, these nasty, horrible, rotten communists are running everything and people have no freedom. Well, I'd say take an objective look at what you can and cannot do in both those locales and make your own determination who's got the most freedom.
What about corruption in China? Do you have to be careful of that if you're investing there?
Yes, and I think that's true across the board. I mean, let's face it, the moral degradation is huge across the planet. I mean, if you go back and study history, the main thing that made the West so great was the rule of law. In other words, if you went into a business deal and it failed because your counterparty, your business partner, for an example, cheated, you had the remedy of law at your side. Now, that doesn't exist in China. And so that was what made the economy so prosperous, is that you basically had to do what you say you were going to do. And if you didn't, you had the court to back up and cause, performance to take hold, or there's a legal remedy to it. So you had to live your word. But that's kind of passé now. I mean, if you're objective, you can see that some of these biggest crimes in the financial world that have taken place in the last several years, there aren't any repercussions. You look at what the investment banks have done, and they get bailed out. Well, they get bailed out on who? The backs of the people. You got this John Corzine, I can't remember where $1.6 billion went. The MF Global debacle. Then they put everybody in PFG and it fails. I mean, there's example after example of corruption throughout the system, and yet in a lot of cases there's no legal remedy whatsoever. Sure, they got the Bernie Madoff and they get an occasional this or that, but look at how many of them slide by and nothing happens. So the whole idea of living your word and doing what you say you're going to do and being it backed up by the rule of law has become an idea whose time has passed. We're in a corrupt world globally. So if you want to point fingers at China, go ahead, but I think you ought to look at, where you're pointing, because as far as I'm concerned, corruption is pervasive, probably more in the West than in the East, and yet it ought to be fair. In the East, you do not have the legal remedies that was so powerful and so important and was basically the foundational situation that caused us, the West, to be the economic superpower at one time. Since we've lost that status.
David, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
David Morgan is the author of the noted Morgan Report Investment Letter, which you can find online at silver-investor.com.
Silver123.net is a silver saver program designed to be as simple as possible. For as little as $50 per month, you can set up and create an automatic cost average buying program that will get silver or gold sent to your door on a monthly basis. The first step to creating an account is easy. You will supply some basic information. Next, you will add a bank account from which you will schedule your purchases. Scheduling purchases makes saving easy. Silver Saver is customizable and allows you to control the amount and the date of purchase. Once you are signed up, you are then given your affiliate code. Now you can save in precious metals and also market this program. You can use email, web pages, and multiple forms of social media to share the Silver Saver program. Silver Saver will reward you generously with physical silver or gold whenever someone you refer becomes a saver. Silver Saver not only provides you with a share code, but also allows you to place your own banner ad on a website of your own. Silver Saver is one of the best ways to start saving and accumulating gold or silver, especially at these levels. Visit silver123.net and start saving today.